Hello, and welcome to the Aries Full Moon forecast. I've just been having a little peruse to the last Aries new moon cycle and recalled that we had two Aries new moons, which is unusual to have two new moons of the same sign within the same year. So we had one at 0 degrees of Aries, and we had one at 29 degrees, and those are the first and last degree of a sign. And here we are, 6 months later, having our Aries full moon. It is closer in proximity to the first of those two full moons because it's at 6 degrees, as you can see here. 6 degrees, the sun is 6 degrees of Libra, and the moon is 6 degrees of Aries. But the 29-degree Aries new moon, which I've actually got them open here. Let me have a look. The 29-degree one was, I think, the end of March. Hold on a second. It was the 20th of April, sorry. And the first one was at 0 degrees on the 21st of March. So 21st of March, and 20th of April. And I feel like there's something in those times for us. So if we go back, if you're a journaler, this is where I find my journals super duper helpful because I can, if you ask me now what was going on then, I cannot recall, but I'm an avid journaler. I journal with the moon phases. Therefore, I can go back and say what was going on then. And the thing that blows my mind with this is I will always see something that is happening now reflected in what was happening then. And it's not like I'm trying to control it. I can be a bit of a control freak, but what I've learned through my astrology studies is it's too much to try and understand, digest, keep tabs of. You can't keep all the balls of the planets in the air and know where everything is at all times and how it's touching your chart and working with other people's charts. So it's more of a like, oh my goodness, look how that works, and constantly being shown how astrology is working for me in my own life. And then as I'm seeing more and more proof of it in myself and in clients, really just wanting to share it with the world because it's just, who knows why it works, but it does, right? So these dates in March, April, you may want to go look back and see what was a bit of a theme going on for you then. Also, if you have anything around the 6-degree mark of the cardinal signs, which are Aries, let me show them to you. Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, because that's where this full moon is. So you can take it sort of 5 degrees in either direction. So you might just say, let me go and look in that 10-degree space and see if I've got a planet there, because then this will be stronger for you. For example, my moon is at 11 degrees of Aries, my natal moon. So this is right close to my natal moon, this full moon. So therefore I can expect some kind of I wanted to say impact, but then that felt like a bit of a, actually it's quite an Aries word. Aries is ruled by Mars, and it's like that ram, which is an impact. So maybe impact is the right word for me in my chart and in my life, but who knows what it reflects in yours. So that's where you may want to have a little deeper look. So the other thing that seems really, really interesting to me, so basically the 29-degree one that was in April, that was the first of the eclipses in the Aries Libra axis. And now in 2 weeks after this full moon, we're having our first Libra eclipse in this Libra Aries axis. But we're still sort of straddling the previous axis of Scorpio and Taurus, because you may remember when we had that Aries eclipse in April, we had also a Scorpio eclipse. Both of those are ruled by Mars, Scorpio and Aries. So we had two Mars-ruled eclipses. It doesn't usually happen that way. So it was a very forceful, intensive space. And at that point, I was planting a seed to look into where we're coming to now in about 2 weeks' time, or 3 weeks' time from when I'm posting this video. We are going to have a double Venus eclipse cycle, and that's going to have a different feeling. We're going to see what it is. We're going to live it in our own experience. If you're a much more Martian person, maybe the Mars ones were really good for you, or maybe they really weren't. If you're a more Venusian person, how does that impact you? this is not like a one size fits all. That's the beauty of astrology when you look deeper into your own chart. It's very, very personal, your blueprint. So this lunation, this full moon in Aries, is not an eclipse, but the last new moon in Aries 6 months ago was an eclipse in Aries, and it was the first of its new axis for eclipse cycles. It's because it's Aries, it's also like the first sign of the zodiac, so it's a bam, the north node in Aries, which is also karmically, how do we become more independent? How do we step into our sovereign selves and show the world that we can do everything we have? We are resourced in ourselves. However, the opposite side of that is Libra, where the sun currently is. And so that's saying, okay, but we don't have to do everything alone. You are resourced, you are wonderful, but can I help you? Maybe it would move faster if we did it together, or maybe I have an idea you wouldn't have thought of. So it's that dichotomy of how do I stay kind of solid and independent in myself, and how do I also work and collaborate with others? Now, again, you're going to bring this to your chart. For example, if you're a Libran, you're going to probably feel much more comfortable with the collaboration and co-creation side of this. If you have strong Aries, like I've got that Aries moon, it may not be your sun, but whatever it is, wherever you're stronger archetypally on that axis, that's where you're going to find some extra juiciness in this. But what it's very likely going to do is it's going to force you into its opposite. So for me, for example, I'm more Aries than I am Libran. So I'm going to find that Aries stuff, and it might be so intense I have to reach across to the Libran. If you're much more Libran, maybe it's trying to force you to reach across into being more independent and fiery and Aryan. And this is another thing that I love about astrology, is there's always an answer to, well, if I'm very this, how do I mitigate it? How do I calm it down a bit? Or what is the antidote? You may look at it that way. For me, when I become very much in my Aries self, the antidote for that for me is Libra. How do I go into all the Libra things? So this is important for us to look at, because again, it's also very much in time with the eclipse season. It kind of starts the eclipse season, even though this full moon, even though it's not an eclipse in itself. And it gives us an echo straight back to the last eclipse season, which was an Aries eclipse. And the Libra eclipse is coming in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks after this one, which will be new moon in Libra. And that's going to give us that opportunity to plant new seeds of where we co-create and collaborate. So if we take this full moon in Aries to really look at, where am I too much this way or not enough that way? When we get to Libra new moon and we want to plant the seeds, we will know what it is that we want to plant. So I think there's something juicy and interesting in that for us. But one of the things that I was also just really recognizing and feel there's also a deep earth magic showing up right now. Now, Aries is a fire sign and Libra is an air sign, and that's our focal point, obviously, of the full moon. However, Taurus space is really full right now with Jupiter and Uranus there. They're both in retrograde at 14 and 22 degrees respectively. But what I found interesting about this is at that Aries eclipse in April, Mercury was in Taurus about to station retrograde, like the same day or later or the next day, very, very tightly about to station retrograde in an earth sign of Taurus. And in fact, at the same point where Jupiter finds himself now. So I thought that was very interesting. Jupiter is now sort of expanding what we were learning in a very concrete material way. How do we build? How do we bring value to? Because that's what Taurus is about. The new ways we were starting to think and operate in that Aries, that previous Aries new moon eclipse. So I find that very interesting because it brings in that Mercury, our new thinking, but Mercury was building to something at that previous point, and then he was about to go through a reflection, a retrograde process around that. What's interesting now is we're having this Aries full moon now, and Mercury has just done another retrograde, but instead of being ready to station retrograde as he was at the previous Aries new moon eclipse, he has just completed his retrograde, and he's going for his third trip over that same kind of space that he's been traveling over. And this is now happening here in Virgo. So he's stationed direct at 8 degrees. I'm just trying to remember if he's out of shadow at this point. I can't remember off the top of my head, sorry. But basically, he's just done another reflective space in the sign, also an earth sign of Virgo. And this is now, how do I work with my day-to-day habits in a practical, material way that will help me to step forward into this new world that I'm stepping into, where I can be sovereign and all things Aries, and I can be Libra and all things collaborative. How do I do that? And so the solutions in this particular full moon with Mercury having just gone direct in Virgo, the solutions are presenting. And bearing in mind, coming back to how Taurus is, that same Taurus spot with Jupiter here is being sort of spotlighted. Full moons are spotlights, and Jupiter is a bit of a spotlight because he makes everything bigger. So if you just think about, like, if you're like squinting to try and see something, and here he comes with a magnifying glass and makes it bigger for us, he's like, go back, think about that. So I don't know, for me personally, and for those who've been watching my videos for a while, you know that I very much just work intuitively and channel while I'm working. But for me personally, we need to reflect back. For this particular full moon, we really want to go and look back to those double Aries new moons in March and April, and look at what was going on there, and look what's resurfacing, because we're actually in a really good iteration of being able to practically get the solutions. We have 2 beautiful trines in the same week of this new moon, earth trines. A trine is a conversation between 2 planets where they are kind of Jupiterian. They're like big mates, and they're like, yes, let's get this, let's do this together, let's get this right. I'm optimistic about it. And that's happening between Mercury. Just before this new moon, Mercury was forming a trine with Jupiter at that same sort of space. So again, Mercury's trine with Jupiter was Mercury reaching across to Jupiter and saying, you remember when I was there and I had that process? Can you just do some more work? I've gone ahead now, but can you just highlight some of the things or pull some of the boxes out that I filed for later? And so they had this conversation just before this moon. And then as the Mercury's at 20 degrees, and you can see that Uranus is at 22 degrees, a short while after, it's like, I think also the next day, Mercury's picking up speed now. I think it's the next day or the day after that, after this moon. So right between this full moon, these 2 trines happen. There is this trine with Uranus, and Uranus is about let's make changes. In fact, we can also look at Uranus as a higher frequency of Mercury. So Mercury is much more like the little details. Let's put the pieces of the puzzle together, especially when he's in Virgo. He really wants to like line everything up, get your templates all in order. And Uranus is like, just expand your mind, break free from old thinking, just revolutionize. Let's do it. So they're having a beautiful conversation as well, a couple of days after, the day after, I think it is, this full moon. So for me, this full moon has got a lot of earth energy as well, Taurus and Virgo particularly, a lot of that energy building in. And earth is always where we can actually concretize, where we can prioritize, become practical, see the work that we're doing, make a plan, a business plan, a structure, a planting plan, whatever it is that you are wanting to do, this is the time to do it. And the passion, enthusiasm, and fire of the Aries energy, and the desire to work together and collaborate with the Libran energy. I feel, even though I am an Aries moon, and personally I often find Aries cycles to be quite intense for me, I'm feeling really optimistic and positive about this one. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to let this get too long. I want to load it for you. I hope this has been helpful. Please remember to like, share, follow, subscribe, etc. Your comments are always appreciated, and just to know that I am on track with what I'm sharing for you and this is helpful, I also leave a link in my bio for anything else that I offer. If you'd like private sessions, I am available for that. So thanks again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next update.